Hello ladies, welcome back to Music and Beauty TV with me, Miss Ruby. As you can see, we're about to get started on a braid tutorial, how to do feed in braids. This is my take on it. I would like to share with you different techniques that I use, and hopefully you can learn something new or at least improve the skills that you already have. So let's get started. Now, as you can see right now, I've already completed one braid, or actually two. I've completed one big braid and one small braid. This is the trend. I wanted to do the video on this client specifically because she wanted something that is very common that people ask for. This is not a video of me doing something complex, intricate, or anything that's like way out of the ordinary. This is a very common way that people get feed in cornrows. These are the products that I'm using. This spray oil on the side, it's called Sproil. It's a very popular. All my clients love it. If you've never used it before, check it out. I usually spray my clients' entire head down when we're finished braiding with this spray. Vonti Silk Effects is my absolute favorite product for doing feed in cornrows. I am a firm believer that you have to be open to using different products for different hair types, but generally when I do feed in cornrows on people, I ask them to get their hair as straight as possible anyway. So I found that when everyone comes with their hair pretty straight, Vonti Silk Effects overall is the best general product to use. And other than that, I will play around with a couple of different edge controls. The first thing that I do is I get the Vonti Silk Effects and I begin to rub that into both sides of the hair. If you have never done this style before, I'd recommend you get someone with fairly straight hair that's easily manageable to practice on, just like this client right here, because then you don't have to do some of the extra things that I'll discuss, but I'm not actually going to show in this video. For instance, sometimes someone's hair is so thick that instead of just rubbing the product along the outside, sometimes I have to part the hair in between and rub product in between so that there are almost like layers of product. And this is the way that I choose to do it. Every once in a while I have a client whose hair is so straight and so laid that I don't hardly have to use any product at all and it's going to stay laid down. But you just have to take the client. Ultimately, you want the braids to look sleek, have a nice tight looking finish without gripping too tight or pulling their hair out. And if that means you have to use more product, then by all means, just let them know. Great thing about this Vonti Silk Effects, it washes out easily. It almost conditions the hair. So I haven't had any problems with flaking or caking up or anything like that. If you don't already know, when you're doing feed in braids, you have to feed hair into the braid as you go. This means that you're going to have a ton of small pieces of hair that are going to go in, and I'm about to show you how that goes. You start off at the front of the hairline, and so that's usually when you're grabbing the least amount of your client's hair. My rule of thumb is that the amount of hair that I'm adding in needs to be just about the same amount as the hair that I'm gripping from my client's head. That way you never see big huge chunks and lumps from me doing my feed in braids. You want your client's braids to look like they are naturally coming from their scalp. People will look at them and not realize that they even have fake hair added. That's what you want to achieve. So gradually add the hair in piece by piece, small bits at a time, and gradually use more and more. Right now, this is the method I'm just showing you of the way that I add the hair in. So as you're doing your cornrow, you'll have to stop, hold the hair in place, grab a little bit of hair that you're going to use, like from the client's hair, like just grab the little section of hair that is going to fold into the next loop. And at that point, then, kind of place the hair in as such. Different people hold the hair a little different in their hands. Whatever it is you have to do to make sure that you do not lose grip of that cornrow that you have in process, and that you're able to slide the added hair into it seamlessly. Just make sure that it looks seamless, it flows, it's tight without pulling too tightly on the client's hair, and it's sleek down. If you even have to go through and add more Vonti to your fingers just to rub that in as you're braiding down, by all means do so. Some people don't use this much product. I've done these braids a whole lot, and I've just found the clients who report that their braids lasted the longest are the ones who I used more product on than others. So it's just my style. So yeah, during the braid down, as you see, once I get towards the bottom, I take that small braid and I feed that in. Keep in mind, because your hands are going to develop almost like a muscle memory of how much hair to feed in gradually as you're going, right? So keep in mind that when it comes time for you to grab that small braid and include it into the large braid, then that's almost like adding hair. So for that portion, just don't overdo it, basically. Don't grab extra hair from the side to add it in, because you have enough that comes with that. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So now that I'm at the bottom, as you guys can see, I changed the pattern of how I hold my hands. Some people probably just get on their knees and continue to braid holding their hands the way that I had mine at the top, but that doesn't work for me. So if you're someone who that doesn't work for either, and you don't know exactly like how to switch your hands over, just rewind this video and watch it over and over. It's actually quite simple. I actually sometimes feel like I get a tighter grip braiding like this. I wish I could braid like this from top to bottom, but I'm really short and that doesn't work out either. Like this video if you're a shorty too. Okay, back to the video. All right, so make sure that when you get to the bottom of the braid that you definitely add product. This is gonna help to prevent the client's hair from like sticking out all crazy. You want it to be folded into the braid really, really neatly and tightly as well as you can, okay? Also, once you're off the scalp, you can braid that braid as tight as you wish because you're no longer going to be pulling hair out of your client's follicles. And then I like to go in with my shears and cut away any flyaways. Now, if you are doing someone's hair and you're using the full pack, you're not cutting it in half and stretching it, you shouldn't have very many flyaways sticking out the braid. The downside to doing it that way though is that the braid is longer, so as you're feeding hair in, you have to finger comb through that super long hair over and over and over. Because I'm short, my arms are not very long, I hate to do it like that, but I will if my client requests it. It just so happens most of my clients don't like really long, thick hair, so they actually like me to cut the braid in half and then use pieces and stretch them. But when you do that, it creates more flyaways at the tips. That's just a little tip to keep in mind. And voila, we have that braid complete. I know that took a long time, but I hope that it helped. Now I want to show you guys a little hack for parting. I'm OCD about my parts. I like everything to be real neat. So if you take some of your product and you rub it down the scalp of the client's hair after you make the initial part, then you go through with that comb, you'll find that it's easier to get the finer part, that real clean separation of hair, because when the product is laying on the hair, for some reason it separates from itself easier than when it's just kind of fluffy at the root. Another thing that I'll say is to use a comb that is designed for parting. Every comb ain't designed for parting really like clean and neat parts like this. So if your comb is giving you a hard time, if you're spending forever and a day parting the hair, you may need to upgrade your comb and get something with a finer tooth, okay? Now I want to show you guys just real quick an example of when I'm feeding hair into the tiny braids. Now some people who do this style, when they get to the small braids in between, they don't add any hair at all, and that works visually. But I've had clients who specifically requested that I add even just a little bit of hair because, like I said, when you're doing cornrows and braids on ethnic hair, everybody's hair is different, but unless the hair is super coarse, then it's probably somewhat soft, and as the days go by, their braids start to look fuzzy, fluffy, and looser. And so adding the hair just helps to keep that braid looking tighter for a little bit longer. So you don't have to add it, but if you're going to, just please make sure you use really itty bitty tiny pieces of hair and add them in gradually. Do not let this little braid be lumpy at all, all right? Then you just stop that off wherever. When you're parting the hair for cornrows, keep in mind that the bottom nape area is smaller than the top that you're starting with. So always make sure that the way that you do your parts and you design your parts is in a way where the finish can be even at the bottom. Like, that's why I don't like to crowd my bottom with braiding these small braids all the way down to the bottom, because that just, it takes up room, and I need that room for the bigger braids, if that makes sense. Especially because with feed-in braids, it gradually gets fatter and fatter toward the bottom. Now, I want to show you an example of me using the E-bend. So what I will typically do is I like to use the Vanti on the sides of the braids so that I can grip that hair in real tight. But the Vanti, the thing that's so great about it is that it also leaves the hair soft enough to slide my fingers through and make those little parts that you see that kind of make it look like stitch braids. Whereas sometimes when I use edge control to do the braids, it's harder for me to like slide my fingers through and part the hair. It kind of gets a little bit thick, if that makes sense, and kind of like stuck together. It's just harder, but I do like to use edge control on the actual edges. Now, this client did not request any like super crazy swirly baby hairs in the front, so I'm just going to show you a small example of if you are going to do baby hairs in the front, this is how you would do it. It's a lot easier to lay baby hairs with your comb than it is with a brush. I discovered that after doing this for so long. Some people still don't know that, so I just wanted to share, because you can comb through every little tiny baby hair and make sure that it's laid perfectly and appropriately. Professional hairstylists know this, but if you're someone who's at home doing hair from home, you haven't gone to school, you haven't worked with all these products and processes, you may not know that. So I wanted to share that with you. Make sure that when you're feeding the hair into this braid, especially if you already have laid the edges down so that they can have like a little swirl and swoop into the braid, make sure that you don't pull from those edges too soon, too high up on the braid, to where now that little swirl that you created is ruined. Does that make sense? That's why I started to braid this one down a few, I did a few loops before I started to pull from that hair on the edges, because I wanted to make sure not to mess up the integrity of that flow. And just continue down, adding hair gradually, maintaining the integrity of the braid, as I like to say, and you should have a nice, smooth, clean finish. Now, here's something I do toward the end. You know when you're doing braids that you need to dip the ends. If you don't know what that means when I say dip the ends, comment below and I'll do a short video for you. But for those of you who already braid, you know to dip the ends. Another thing I like to do after I dip the ends and I trim them, I like to dip the towel in the hot water, squeeze it out a little bit, and lay it on top of my client's head. Now, you'll see that some girls in some videos at this point in time will spray the client's hair down with a bunch of mousse, then lay the wraps on top of it, sit them under the dryer. That's something that you can do. My clients, most of them express to me that they don't like it and that it's not necessary. What that does is that adds extra hold and an extra finish. So I'm not really knocking it, but it does prolong the process for a very, very minimal enhancement, if that makes sense. So instead of me doing that, I like to take the towel, dip it in hot water, lay it on top of my client's hair. The steam from that hot water is going to help to open up the hair follicles, and that oil that I sprayed on her hair is going to be able to penetrate more deeply in. So the heat it just creates a really nice sensation on the client's hair. I even have some clients that tell me after they get braids, they'll go take a hot shower just so the steam can kind of loosen up their hair at the root so it doesn't hurt so much. So I like to help that process get started before they leave my chair. It's just my style. In addition to that, we all know that heat helps to lay the hair, and so that helps to add a little bit of sleekness to the braids and the finish. But if you follow everything I told you, then you shouldn't really have too much that you need to lay down at the end anyway. I hope this video helped you guys. Let me know if there's anything else you need to know about doing feed-in braids. Share this video with your friends if you think it'll help them. Thank you for subscribing to Music and Beauty TV. Check out some of my other work on my channel. Subscribe if you love it. God bless you, and I will see you on the next video. Mwah.